The dim hum of the colony ship's engines vibrated through the bulkheads like a distant heartbeat, steady but weary after decades in the void. Captain Ilara Voss gripped the armrest of her command chair, her calloused fingers tracing the worn edges of the console. At 47, she was all sharp angles and unyielding resolve, her dark hair cropped short against the recycled air's relentless dryness. Around her, the bridge crew moved with practiced efficiency. Jax, the wiry engineer with a perpetual squint from poring over schematics. Lena, the navigator whose quick wit masked a cautious core. And Tomas, the young medic who patched more than bodies, stitching together frayed morale with quiet jokes. Ilara's gaze fixed on the forward viewport, where the stars stretched into an endless black canvas, unbroken save for the faint glow of their destination. A rogue planetoid, dubbed Epsilon 7, that had wandered into sensor range 3 cycles ago. It wasn't much, a jagged rock half the size of Luna, laced with ice and minerals that could replenish their dwindling hydroponics and fusion cores. But it was a chance, and in the long haul from Sol, chances were lifelines. Status on approach, Lena? Ilara's voice cut through the hum, calm but expectant. Lena leaned over her holographic display, fingers dancing across the interface. Holding steady at 0.2 C, cap atmospheric skim in 20 minutes. Scans show stable orbit, no surprises, yet. She flashed a grin, but her eyes lingered on the readouts, betraying the caution that had kept them alive through 2 asteroid dodges already. Jax snorted from his station, wiping grease from his hands on his jumpsuit. No surprises? That's what you said about that debris field last year. Nearly turned us into confetti. His wit was dry as the ship's rations, a shield against the isolation that gnawed at them all. Tomas chuckled softly, monitoring vitals from the med bay feed. At least confetti would be colorful. This void's grayer than my last haircut. Ilara allowed a faint smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. The ship, Odyssey's Reach, carried 247 souls, families, scientists, dreamers, who'd left Earth chasing a new start. Pride had built the vessel, human grit had launched it, but 20 years of cryosleep rotations and rationed hope had worn it thin. Epsilon 7 could buy them time, maybe even a foothold. Failure wasn't an option, it was just the slow death they'd all signed up to outrun. As the planetoid loomed larger, a faint tremor rippled through the deck. Alarms didn't blare, yet, but Ilara's instincts prickled. Jax, what's that vibration? Engines? He frowned, pulling up diagnostics. Not the engines. Feels like feedback from the hull. Maybe micrometeors. Lena's console beeped sharply. Incoming scan anomaly. Something's reflecting our probes. Wait, it's moving. The viewport filled with the planetoid's craggy surface, pocked with craters like old wounds. But amid the ice fields a shadow stirred, not rock, not ice. A structure angular and vast, half buried in the regolith. Alien. Uncharted. Ilara straightened, her voice steel. All hands, battle stations. Lena, plot evasive if it pings us. Jax, armor the hull. Tomas, prep the med bay for unknowns. The crew snapped to action, the bridge alive with urgent murmurs. Pride had carried humanity this far, but as the shadow resolved into spires that dwarfed their ship, Ilara wondered if the stars demanded more than grit, they demanded humility. Captain Ilara Voss gripped the armrests of her command chair, the hum of the Endurance's engines vibrating through the deck like a distant heartbeat. The view screen flickered with static, painting the bridge in erratic blue flashes that mirrored the storm of alerts blaring from every console. Status Reyes, she said, her voice steady despite the knot in her gut. Lieutenant Marco Reyes, the ship's wiry engineer, wiped sweat from his brow with a grease-streaked forearm. His fingers danced over a holographic panel, pulling up schematics that twisted like vines in the air. Warp cores holding, but the containment fields fraying. That asteroid belt we skimmed, micro-impacts overloaded the shields. We've got maybe 6 hours before the whole thing cascades. Dr. Lena Kai leaned against the navigation station, her sharp eyes scanning the starfield ahead. The xenobiologist's calm demeanor hid the calculations racing in her mind. She was the cautious one, always weighing risks like a merchant balancing scales. And the probe data? If we're this close to the nebula, there might be salvageable elements to reinforce the field. but pushing through could tear us apart. Pilot Jax Harlan snorted from his station, his broad shoulders hunched over the controls. The hotshot with a grin that could charm a black hole, he cracked his knuckles. Salvage? In this soup? I'll fly us through blindfolded if you give the word, Cap. But Reyes is right, we're leaking plasma like a sieve. Ilara's jaw tightened. The mission was simple on paper. Chart the outer rim of the Orion Arm, seed a few automated outposts for the Alliance. But the Endurance wasn't some gleaming dreadnought, she was a retrofitted hauler, crewed by misfits who'd traded glory for grit. Now, with the nearest relay station light years behind and the nebula's electromagnetic haze scrambling comms, their ingenuity was all they had. Helm, plot a micro-jump to the nebula's edge. Reyes, reroute auxiliary power to the shields, burn the non-essentials if you have to. Ilara stood, her boots magnetized to the deck as the ship shuddered. The plan was a gamble. Skim the nebula for ionized particles to patch the field, then limp to the outpost site. It had worked in Sims, but reality had a way of biting back. As the engines whined in protest, Jax punched the coordinates. Stars streaked into lines, then blurred into chaos. The deck lurched, and a sharp crack echoed from engineering, another panel sparking out. Jump complete, Jax announced, but his voice held an edge. The view screen filled with the nebula's swirling purples and golds, a cosmic maelstrom that swallowed light whole. Reyes cursed under his breath. Containment at 62%. We're venting, wait incoming debris. Alarms wailed as chunks of ionized rock pinged off the hull, each impact a hammer blow. Lena braced against the console, her fingers flying to analyze the particle stream. There, trace elements, heavy metals. If we deploy the collector nets. But the ship bucked violently, throwing Jax forward. A console erupted in flames, and Ilara smelled the acrid bite of melting circuits. Their early plan, so neatly plotted, was unraveling faster than a frayed tether. The nebula wasn't just a resource, it was a predator, and the Endurance was bleeding into its jaws. Ilara hit the intercom. All hands brace for evasive. Reyes, give me options, now. In the dim light, her crew's faces hardened, not with fear, but resolve. They weren't heroes from Holovitz. They were humans, stubborn as the stars themselves, and they'd claw their way through or die welding the pieces back. The red dust of Epsilon Eridani 4 clung to everything, a fine grit that seeped into joints and seems like an unwelcome guest. Elena wiped her visor for the third time that hour, her gloved hand smearing more than it cleaned. The rover's treads groaned against the rocky terrain, kicking up plumes that shimmered in the weak sunlight filtering through the perpetual haze. Marco hunched over the controls, his fingers dancing across the makeshift dashboard, coaxing the battered machine forward with muttered curses in 3 languages. See that ridge ahead? Lila's voice crackled over the comms from the rear compartment, where she monitored the dwindling oxygen reserves. Her tone was clipped, cautious as always, the kind of steady that kept them alive but grated on Elena's nerves during dead sprints like this. Scans show a cavern network. Could be shelter from the flares. Elena nodded, though Lila couldn't see it. The solar flares had hit harder than predicted. Massive bursts from the system's unstable star that fried electronics and scorched the surface. Their initial landing site, a promising plateau with trace water ice, had turned into a furnace trap within hours. Now they were racing across the Badlands, the rover's solar cells barely keeping pace with the power drain. One more surge and they'd be blind. Marco snorted, not looking up. Shelter? Or a death trap with cave-ins waiting? Your scans missed the seismic rumbles last cycle. He was the witty one, the engineer who jury-rigged their escape from the initial crash with nothing but scrap and spite. But humor masked the edge in his voice. They all felt the rover's frame shuddering, a sign the undercarriage was fracturing. The first flare warning pinged, a high-pitched whine that made Elena's teeth ache. She gripped the armrest, eyes on the horizon where the ridge loomed like a jagged scar. Push it, Marco. We hit that cavern or we cook. He gunned the throttle, the rover lurching over a boulder field. Rocks skittered away, one glancing off the hull with a metallic thunk. Inside, the air grew thicker, recyclers straining against the heat bleeding in from the armored glass. Lila's breathing quickened over the line, Elena could picture her back there, pale and focused, cross-checking data on a flickering tablet. As they crested a shallow rise, the flare hit. The sky ignited, a curtain of plasma washing over them in waves of violet and gold. Alarms blared, power surge, shields at 80%. The rover bucked, treads slipping on loose gravel as electromagnetic interference scrambled the NAV system. Marco slammed a fist on the console, rerouting auxiliary power with frantic taps. "Hold on. I've got a bypass." A jolt rocked them sideways, the world tilting. Elena braced as the rover fishtailed, slamming into an outcrop. Metal screamed, and the lights flickered to emergency red. Silence followed, broken only by the hiss of escaping pressure seals. Lila was first to move, her compartment door hissing open. Hull breach in the aft storage, oxygen leaking. "We need to seal it now." Her face, visible through the dust-smeared partition, was set in determination, no room for debate. Elena unstrapped, grabbing the emergency kit. The cavern was close, maybe 200 meters, but the rover wouldn't make it. Marco was already under the dash, sparks flying from his multi-tool. Shields held, but the drive's toast. "We're walking." The word hung heavy. Walking meant suits, limited air, and exposure to the flare's radiation. Elena sealed her helmet, the click echoing her resolve. Outside, the dust storm whipped fierce, carrying the acrid tang of ionized rock. They hauled what they could, oxygen tanks, the scanner, Marco's toolkit, leaving behind non-essentials like the sample kits from the ruined landing. The trek blurred into a grind. Elena led, her boots sinking into the shifting scree, each step a calculation against the wind's push. Behind her, Marco lugged the heaviest pack, cracking jokes that fell flat against the roar. "If we die out here, at least the view's stellar." Pun intended. Lila brought up the rear, scanner in hand, her cautious pace ensuring they didn't veer into fissures hidden by the haze. But as the cavern mouth yawned closer, a deeper rumble shook the ground, not seismic but something alive. The scanner beeped erratically, picking up movement below the surface. Elena froze, signaling halt. "What is that?" Lila's voice was a whisper in their ears. "Burrowers. Native life, big ones. The flares drive them up. We can't go in blind." The rover's failure had been bad, this was worse. They were exposed, air ticking down, and the ridge that promised safety now pulsed with hidden threats. Elena's hand tightened on her harness, mind racing for a way through. Grit alone wouldn't cut it. They needed a plan fast before the next flare or the ground itself swallowed them whole. The dim hum of the auxiliary engines vibrated through the deck plating, a constant reminder that the Endeavour was limping, not flying. Captain Ilara Voss gripped the armrest of her command chair, her knuckles whitening as she scanned the holographic display. Red alerts flickered like dying embers, hull integrity at 62%, oxygen recyclers straining under the weight of debris-clogged filters. Her crew, what was left of them, moved with the quiet efficiency born of desperation. Engineer Tomas Reyes patching conduits and engineering, his hands smeared with conductive gel. Navigator Lila Chen at her station, plotting erratic jumps to evade the pursuing Caliph swarm. "They're closing cap," Lila said, her voice steady but edged with fatigue. She didn't look up from her console, fingers dancing over the interface. 3 minutes until their interceptors are in weapons range. We slingshot around that gas giant or we're done. Ilara nodded, tasting the metallic tang of recycled air. The Caliph weren't conquerors in the old sense. No grand invasions or ideological crusades. They were scavengers, opportunistic predators who stripped disabled ships for parts, leaving nothing but frozen husks. The Endeavour had been a prize run afoul of a micrometeor storm, its shields shredded before they could react. Now, pride be damned, survival meant improvisation. "Tomas, status on the gravitic decoy?" Ilara called into the comm. A grunt echoed back, followed by the whine of a welder sealing off. "Online in 30. It's a jury rig, Ilara, won't fool their sensors for long. But it'll buy us a window if we time it right." She trusted his grit. Tomas had pulled the ship through worse back when they first charted the Veil Nebula. Brave to a fault, he'd once rerouted power from life support to save a probe, earning a reprimand and a legend. Now, with the crew down to 4 after the storm claimed 2, his caution had sharpened into something lethal. The view screen bloomed with the swirling ochre clouds of the gas giant, a colossal eye staring back indifferently. Alara leaned forward. Lila, plot the slingshot. Tight arc, maximum burn on arrival. We'll drop the decoy mid-turn, make them think we're venting plasma. Aye. Lila's eyes narrowed, calculating vectors in her head before committing them to the NAV core. Witty under fire, she'd once quipped that space was just God's filing cabinet, full of forgotten junk. Today that junk was their edge. Alarms blared as the Caliph signatures tightened on the grid, sleek, needle-like ships, their hulls iridescent with adaptive armor. Alara's pulse thrummed. Engage evasive pattern delta. Hold fire until the decoy's live. The ship groaned, inertial dampeners lagging as they dove toward the giant's gravity well. G-forces pressed Alara into her seat, a dull ache blooming in her temples. Through the viewport, the planet's bands of storm twisted like living veins, lightning forking in silent fury. Decoy away, Tomas announced, his voice cutting through the strain. A faint shudder rippled the deck as the makeshift drone ejected, broadcasting false heat signatures and engine flares. On the display, it bloomed into a spectral duplicate of the Endeavor, peeling off toward the planet's pole. The Caliph hesitated, sensors pinging, algorithms debating the apparition. Two interceptors broke formation, veering toward the bait. But the lead ship held course, its weapons priming with a predatory glow. They're not biting fully, Lila warned. Adjusting trajectory, brace. Alara braced as the slingshot pulled them into a screaming arc. The gas giant's pull wrenched at the frame, struts creaking like old bones. In that moment, suspended between escape and capture, she glimpsed the cost. If they failed, the Endeavor became another relic, its logs silent testimony to human reach exceeding grasp. But failure wasn't in the stars, it was in surrender. The decoy detonated in a brilliant false explosion, scattering sensor ghosts across the void. The pursuing Caliph faltered, their formation fracturing as they chased phantoms. Endeavor asterisk surged free, engines coughing but defiant, slipping into the nebula's embrace. For now the stars had blinked first. Elena gripped the edge of the console, her knuckles whitening as the ship's alarms blared in staccato bursts. The viewport ahead showed nothing but the swirling void of the nebula, its tendrils of gas glowing faintly purple, like bruises on the skin of space. Marco was already under the panel, his tools clinking against the exposed wiring, sweat beading on his forehead despite the recycled air's chill. Got it, he muttered, voice muffled. The auxiliary pumps seized, debris from that last micrometeor hit must have gummed it up. Give me 2 minutes. Lila hovered nearby, her tablet clutched like a shield, eyes darting between readouts. 2 minutes we don't have. The core's temperature is spiking. If we don't vent the excess heat soon, it'll cascade into the main drive. Elena nodded, forcing calm into her tone. Then make it one. The Krell ship's closing fast, scans show they're powering weapons. They think we're easy pickings, drifting dead in the nebula. The plan had seemed solid back in the mess hall. Use the nebula's interference to mask their signature, slip past the rival salvage crew, and reach the outpost with the artifact intact. But the micrometeor storm had other ideas, shredding their maneuvering thrusters and leaving them limping. Now the Krell, those hulking insectoids with their hive mind tactics, had locked on, their vessel cutting through the gas clouds like a scythe. Marco swore softly, the sound carrying over the hum of failing systems. Pumps toast. We improvise, reroute the coolant lines through the secondary vents. It'll buy us time, but it'll freeze the outer hull. No evasive maneuvers after that. Do it, Elena said, her mind racing. Brave didn't mean reckless, but hesitation now meant death, or worse, the artifact in Krell claws. The thing was human-made, a relic from the old wars, its quantum core humming with secrets that could shift alliances across the sector. Losing it wasn't an option. Lila tapped furiously on her tablet. Rerouting now. But, Elena, their scans will penetrate the nebula in 30 seconds. If they board, they won't. Elena straightened, activating the comms. All hands brace for turbulence. Marco, how's it looking? A spark flashed under the panel, and Marco yanked back his hand, shaking it. Done. Cores stabilizing, temps dropping. But we're blind on sensors till the ice melts. The ship shuddered as the vents hissed open, supercooled mist blooming outside the hull. Elena watched the external cams, frost spider webbing across the plates, turning the sturdy alloy brittle. One good hit from the Krell's plasma lances and they'd shatter like glass. Contact, Lila whispered. The proximity alert pinged, and there it was, the Krell ship emerging from the nebula's edge, its segmented hull iridescent under the gas lights, mandibles of sensor arrays twitching. Elena hit the manual override, firing a burst from the auxiliary thrusters. The ship lurched forward, sluggish but alive, carving a path deeper into the clouds. Hold course. Let them chase the ghost. Marco climbed out, wiping grease from his face with a grin that didn't reach his eyes. Ghost? More like a sitting duck. That ice is cracking already, vibrations from the engines. The deck vibrated beneath them, a low groan echoing through the corridors. Lila's tablet beeped urgently. Hull integrity at 70%. And the Krell are matching speed, they're hailing. Elena accepted the transmission, the view screen flickering to life with the image of a Krell commander, its compound eyes gleaming, voice a chittering buzz translated poorly by the universal protocol. Human vessel, you trespass and claim drift space. Power down and prepare for boarding. Resistance is inefficient. Claimed by who? Elena shot back, buying time. Last I checked, nebulae don't come with deeds. The commander's mandibles clicked. The artifact you carry belongs to the hive. Surrender it or we harvest your hull. Marco leaned in, whispering, stall them. I can jury-rig the artifact's emitter, make it pulse like a decoy signal, draw them off. Lila shook her head. Too risky. The core's unstable, one wrong surge and it implodes, taking us with it. Elena met their gazes, the weight of command settling like nebula dust. We don't have a choice. Marco, rig it. Lila, monitor the hull, find us a weak spot in their pursuit vector. As Marco dove back under the console, the ship jolted again. A Krell probe skimmed their flank, its energy wake cracking the ice further. Shards floated free, glinting like diamonds in the void. Elena's heart pounded, but she kept her voice steady. This is Captain Reyes. We're not surrendering anything. Try to take it and you'll learn why humans don't break easy. The transmission cut and the Krell ship accelerated, closing the gap. The nebula's glow intensified around them, hiding threats in its folds, but Elena knew, the real fight was just beginning. The artifact's hum grew faintly in the background, a reminder of what was at stake, and what they'd lose if they failed. Elena gripped the railing of the makeshift scaffold, her knuckles whitening against the cold metal. Below, the cavernous engine bay of the derelict stretched like a forgotten wound in the hull of the ancient vessel. Sparks danced from Jax's torch, illuminating the tangle of conduits that snaked through the darkness. The air hummed with the low whine of failing recyclers, each breath tasting thinner, sharper, as if the station itself were exhaling its last. Almost there, Jax muttered, his voice echoing off the curved walls. Sweat beaded on his brow, dripping onto the exposed wiring. He wrestled into submission. He was the picture of focused chaos, tools clipped to his belt like talismans, his wiry frame bent at an impossible angle. If I can just reroute this bypass, we'll squeeze another hour out of the core. Mira hovered at the edge of the platform, her tablet clutched like a shield. Her eyes, sharp behind smudged lenses, flicked between readouts and the flickering holos projected from the alien console. Cautious as ever, she adjusted her stance, one foot testing the stability of the groaning deck plating. Hour? Jax, the projections show atmospheric integrity dropping below viable in 40 minutes. We can't afford another improvisation. The plan had seemed solid back in the forward bay. Jax would hotwire the auxiliary power grid to the main life support, buying time until the distress beacon pulled in reinforcements from the fleet. But the alien tech resisted like a living thing, interfaces that shifted under touch, energy flows that looped back on themselves in fractal defiance. Elena had pushed for it anyway, her bravery a quiet fire that warmed the chill of doubt. Now, with the first attempt sputtering into overload, the stakes clawed higher. A sudden jolt rocked the scaffold. Alarms blared from Myra's tablet, red lights pulsing across the bay. Jack swore, yanking his hand back as a conduit erupted in a shower of blue plasma. The torch clattered to the floor, rolling toward the abyss. Elena lunged, snatching it just before it vanished into the shadows, her heart pounding against her ribs. "Containment breach," Mira said, her voice steady but edged with urgency. She tapped furiously, pulling up schematics that blurred into incomprehensibility. The reroute destabilized the secondary seals. "We're venting atmosphere, fast." Elena straightened, torch in hand, and scanned the bay. The one striking image burned into her mind. A massive crystalline relay at the far end, its facets glowing faintly like captured starlight, untouched by their fumbling repairs. It was the heart of the station's old power web, a relic from a civilization that had danced with black holes. Pride had kept them from it before, human protocol screaming about contamination, about not meddling with forces beyond understanding. But pride was a luxury they no longer had. "Jax, seal what you can," Elena ordered, her tone cutting through the din. "Mira, map a path to that relay. We're going in." Jax paused, wiping his face with a grimy sleeve, his wit surfacing in a wry grin despite the sweat. "The forbidden fruit, huh? Figures it'd take a hull breach to make us bite." Mira hesitated, her cautious nature flaring. "Captain, the readings, it's not just power. There's quantum entanglement signatures. One wrong move and we could unravel the whole station." Elena met her gaze, the weight of command settling like dust after a storm. "Or save it. And us. We adapt or we die here." The scaffold creaked as Jax hammered a patch over the sparking conduit, buying seconds. Mira nodded reluctantly, her fingers flying across the tablet, tracing a hazardous route through the underbelly, ladders slick with condensation, bulkheads humming with unstable energy. Elena led the way down, boots clanging on rungs that bent under their weight. The air grew colder, heavier, each inhale a reminder of the thinning veil between life and void. Halfway across the catwalk, a tremor shook the structure. Mira slipped, her tablet skittering toward the edge. Jax dove, catching it with a curse, but the motion unbalanced him. He teetered, arms windmilling, until Elena's hand clamped his harness. "Got you," she grunted, pulling him back. "Thanks," he gasped, the camaraderie unspoken but ironclad. No lectures, just the raw pulse of survival binding them. They pressed on, the relay's glow pulling them deeper into the unknown. Ellie looming larger, its glow casting elongated shadows that twisted like warnings. Elena reached it first, her gloved hand hovering over the interface. The crystal pulsed, almost in rhythm with her heartbeat, a silent invitation or trap. She pressed forward, fingers finding purchase on the smooth surface. Energy surged, not destructive, but alive, threading through the station like veins awakening. Myra's voice crackled over the comm, it's sinking. Power levels climbing, but the entanglement, it's pulling from external sources. "The stars, Captain. It's drawing from the stars." Jax whistled low. "Humanity's luck. We wake the beast and it feeds us." The bay stabilized, recyclers humming back to life, but Elena felt the shift deep in her bones. The station wasn't just powered, it was listening, its ancient pride bending to their desperate ingenuity. Yet as the air sweetened, a new alert pinged. Myra's tablet warning of incoming signals, not from their fleet but something older, hungrier, drawn by the relay's call. The cost of their triumph lingered, a shadow in the renewed light. The dim glow of the auxiliary lights cast long shadows across the engineering bay, where Marco wiped sweat from his brow with the back of his hand. The hum of the failing stabilizers vibrated through the deck plating, a constant reminder that their makeshift patch on the warp core was holding by threads thinner than hope. Elena stood nearby, her arms crossed, eyes fixed on the diagnostic screen that flickered like a dying star. "We can't keep jury-rigging this forever," she said, her voice steady but edged with the weight of command. "The rift's pulling us off course again. If we don't realign the emitters in the next hour, we'll be spat out into uncharted null space, permanently." Lila hunched over her console, fingers flying across the holographic interface, her cautious nature showing in the way she double-checked every calculation. She was the one who'd spotted the anomaly first, a subtle gravitational echo from the alien derelict they'd salvaged weeks ago. That thing had promised unlimited energy, But now it was a curse, warping reality around their ship like a stone skipped across a pond. The artifact's resonance is amplifying, she murmured, not looking up. Our initial plan to dampen it with the auxiliary fields worked for a bit, but it's adapting. Like it's learning. Marco snorted, grabbing a plasma torch from the toolkit scattered at his feet. His wit was his armor, even here in the belly of the beast. Learning? Great, so we've got a grumpy black box that's smarter than us. What's next? It starts quoting poetry? He knelt beside the access panel, sparks flying as he sealed a leaking conduit. But his grin faded when the ship lurched, claxons blaring a fresh warning. The emitters, their lifeline, sputtered offline, the plan unraveling faster than a poorly knotted rope. Elena braced against the bulkhead, her brave resolve cracking just enough to let frustration show. She'd led them through asteroid fields and pirate skirmishes, but this was different. No enemy to fight, just the indifferent vastness of space conspiring against them. Override the safeties, she ordered, striding to the core chamber. Marco, get in there and manual sync the crystals. Lila, reroute power from life support if you have to. We buy time or we lose everything. The engineer hesitated for a split second, the risk hitting him like a cold wave. Syncing by hand meant exposure to the core's radiation bleed, a gamble that could fry his nerves in minutes. But he nodded, clapping Elena on the shoulder as he passed. On it, Cap. Just don't let the stars eat us while I'm playing hero. He slipped into the chamber, the door hissing shut behind him, leaving the women in tense silence broken only by the ship's groans. Lila's screens lit up with error cascades, her caution urging her to pull back, to find a safer way. But Elena's presence grounded her. The captain's unyielding grit was infectious. He's right, we adapt or we die, Elena said, more to herself than anything. Together they wrestled the power grid, shunting energy in desperate bursts. Minutes stretched like taffy, each one heavier than the last. Inside the chamber, Marco's world narrowed to the pulsing crystals, their ethereal blue light bathing him in false serenity. He reached out, gloves humming with insulation that he knew wouldn't hold forever. The first sync locked with a satisfying click, but the second, the artifact's interference surged, a psychic static that clawed at his mind. Visions flickered, endless voids, alien whispers promising power beyond humanity's grasp. He gritted his teeth, whispering a half-remembered joke to steady himself. Come on, you oversized battery. Play nice. The ship shuddered violently, a backfire that sent tools skittering across the bay. Lila cried out as a console shorted, sparks singeing her sleeve. Elena slammed the emergency seal, her mind racing through contingencies. The plan had failed spectacularly, the rift yawned wider, dragging them toward oblivion. But in that chaos, a spark of ingenuity ignited. Lila's eyes widened, spotting a harmonic pattern in the interference. Wait, the artifact's not fighting us. It's resonating with our own engines. If we phase match instead of dampen. Elena seized the idea, barking orders into the comm. Marco, hold position. We're flipping the script. As the engineer fought through the haze, the women pivoted, their teamwork a fragile bridge over the abyss. The cost was already mounting, dimming lights, thinning air, and the gnawing fear that adaptation might come too late. Yet in the heart of the storm, humanity's stubborn fire burned brighter, refusing to bow. Jax wiped the sweat from his brow, the acrid tang of overheating circuits stinging his nostrils. The makeshift repair bay in the lower deck hummed with the erratic pulse of jury-rigged power conduits, sparks dancing like fireflies in the dim emergency lighting. Elena paced behind him, her boots thudding against the grated floor, each step a reminder of the ticking clock outside, the storm's howl rattling the hull like an angry beast. Any luck with the core stabilizer? She asked, voice steady but edged with the strain of holding back frustration. He didn't look up from the exposed panel, fingers dancing over exposed wires that sparked at his touch. Luck's for amateurs, Cap. This is pure spite. The surge fried half the relays, and the spares we scavenged from the alien wreck are incompatible. Think square peg, round quantum hole. Mira hovered at the edge of the workspace, her tablet clutched like a shield, eyes flicking between readouts and the viewport where violet lightning cracked the sky. The atmospheric pressures dropping again. If we don't seal the breach soon, the toxins will seep in. We've got maybe an hour before the filters overload. Elena stopped pacing, leaning against a bulkhead that groaned under the wind's assault. The planet's storms had caught them off guard after the emergency landing, turning their salvage mission into a fight for survival. The rival Krell scouts had long since retreated, but this world didn't care about interstellar rivalries, it just wanted to bury them. Jax yanked a final connection free, holding up a mangled component that gleamed with iridescent alien alloy. See this? Their tech's elegant, sure but brittle. One EMP pulse from our failing shields and poof, useless. We need to bypass it entirely, route power through the auxiliary thrusters. Mira shook her head, cautious as ever. That could destabilize the whole ship. The thrusters aren't designed for sustained load, we'd risk a cascade failure. Better than suffocating in a tin can, Jax shot back, his wit sharpening like a blade under pressure. He grabbed a coil of salvaged cable, splicing it with practiced speed, the tool in his hand whirring softly. Elena nodded, decision made in the flicker of her eyes. Do it. Mira, monitor the flows, flag anything that spikes. I'll check the outer hull. If the storm's weakening, we might vent the toxins manually. As she sealed her suit and headed for the airlock, Jax felt the weight of it all. The camaraderie that bound them tighter than any contract, the human grit that refused to yield. The splice held, power humming through new paths, but a distant alarm blared, red lights pulsing. The storm wasn't weakening, it was building, and something massive stirred in the clouds, a shadow eclipsing the lightning. Myra's voice cracked over the comm. Jax, readings off the chart. That's not wind, it's a swarm. Incoming fast. He sealed the panel, grabbing his toolkit. Earned triumph wasn't handed out, it was wrestled from the jaws of disaster. Hang on, team. Time to improvise. Elena gripped the railing of the observation deck, her knuckles white against the cold metal. The stars outside the viewport stretched into an endless void, indifferent to the chaos unfolding below. Jax's latest hack into the auxiliary systems had bought them time, but the alarms blared louder now, a relentless pulse that matched her heartbeat. It's holding, he muttered from the console, his fingers flying over the holographic keys, sweat beading on his forehead. Barely. The core's overheating, if we push it, we fry everything. Mira paced behind them, her tablet clutched like a shield. We can't afford to wait. The Krell ship's closing in. Their scans will pick up the distress signal any minute. Her voice carried that cautious edge, the one that had saved them from disaster twice already, but today it grated against Elena's resolve. The Krell weren't just rivals, they were scavengers of dying worlds, stripping resources from fleets like theirs without a second thought. One wrong move and the Endeavor would join the wreckage. Elena straightened, forcing calm into her limbs. Options. Now. She turned to Jax, who wiped his brow with the back of his hand. The engineer grinned, that wry twist of his lips that always signaled trouble laced with genius. We vent the excess heat into the forward bays. It'll melt the storage pods, but it'll mask our signature long enough to slingshot around that gas giant. Risky, but humans do risky best. Mira stopped pacing, her eyes narrowing. And lose half our supplies? We're already rationing oxygen. One backfire and we're adrift. The debate hung in the air, thick as the recycled air they breathed. Elena weighed it, the cost of survival against the slow bleed of their reserves. The Krell's shadow loomed larger on the tactical display, a predatory silhouette cutting through the starfield. Do it, Elena said finally, her voice steady. Jax nodded, initiating the sequence with a flourish. The ship groaned, a deep metallic shudder rippling through the deck. Alarms shifted pitch, warning of pressure imbalances. Elena braced as the first pod seals blew, a hiss echoing from the vents. Frost spiderwebbed across the bulkhead, the cold bite of space intruding. But then the sensors lit up. The Krell vessel altered course, veering toward what they thought was a debris field, their own illusion. Jax hooped, pumping a fist. See? Human ingenuity, turning trash into triumph. Mira exhaled, sinking into a chair, but her gaze lingered on the dwindling resource readouts. The slingshot maneuver would work, but the lost pods meant lean days ahead, a reminder that every victory carved deeper into their endurance. As the Endeavour banked hard, gravity pressing them into their seats, Elena caught a glimpse of the gas giant swelling in the viewport. Swirls of orange and violet churned like a living storm, hiding their escape. The stars beyond seemed to shift as if acknowledging the gambit. But in the quiet after the roar, doubt flickered. How many more tricks could they pull before the void claimed its due? The stars outside the viewport blurred into streaks of light, but they weren't the comforting rush of hyperspace travel. No, this was the ragged edge of reality fraying around them, the ship's failing containment field tearing at the fabric of space itself. Marco's voice crackled over the intercom, laced with that familiar sarcasm that kept them all from cracking. Cap, if you wanted a light show, I could have rigged fireworks in the mess hall. This one's on me, field's down to 20%. She didn't laugh. Couldn't. Lila huddled in the corner, her tablet clutched like a shield, eyes darting between readouts that painted a grim picture. Oxygen reserves dipping, hull integrity holding by threads, and the nearest relay station light years away, silent as a grave. The Krell swarm had cut them off hours ago, those bioengineered horrors from the outer rim, not content with devouring colonies but now chasing a lone human vessel like it was sport. Elena's plan to outrun them in the nebula had backfired spectacularly. The ionized gases amplified the swarm's sensors, turning their hiding spot into a beacon. Options? Elena asked, her voice steady despite the tremor in her chest. She pushed off the railing, pacing the narrow deck. The air hummed with the ship's labored groans, a symphony of warning klaxons muted to a dull whine. Marco's response came quick, punctuated by the clank of tools. We patched the field with the auxiliary generators, but it'll burn out the engines. Buy us maybe an hour. Or we vent the nebula gas into the intakes. Risky as hell, could fry the whole system, but it might cloak us long enough to jump. Lila looked up, her cautious nature warring with the fire Elena had seen spark in her during the evacuation of Epsilon Prime. The gas could destabilize the core. We've lost too many already, crew down to skeleton, and if we fail. She trailed off, but her eyes said it, no more second chances. Elena nodded, the weight of command settling heavier than the artificial gravity. The swarm's Vanguard probes had nicked them earlier, scoring the hull like claws on flesh, and the cost was already tallied. 3 lives gone in the breach, their faces haunting the logs. But humans didn't fold. Not out here where the stars had bowed to their will before. Marco prepped the vents. Lila, run simulations, find me the sweet spot. We're not dying in a cloud of pretty lights. As the ship shuddered, Elena felt the pull of the fraying field, a vertigo that made the deck tilt. She steadied herself, mind racing through contingencies. The Krell thought them prey, scattered and weak after the Federation's collapse. But she'd seen Marco improvise a shield from scrap during the siege, Lila calculate trajectories that turned ambushes into escapes. Together, they'd make the stars remember why humanity had claimed them. Down in engineering, Marco wiped sweat from his brow, the acrid tang of overheating circuits filling the air. He rerouted power lines with hands that shook only from fatigue, not fear. "Come on, you stubborn beast," he muttered to the console, fingers flying over the patched interface. The nebula's glow filtered through the vents, casting eerie shadows that danced like specters. One wrong move, and the swarm would close in, their tendrils piercing the hull to claim the warmth inside. Lila's voice piped through his earpiece, calm now, analytical. Simulation complete. Vent at 30-second intervals, core temp won't exceed redline if we throttle the jumps. But Elena? But what? Marco snapped, sealing a conduit with a hiss of sparks. It's the swarm's queen signature. It's adapting, learning our patterns. If we jump blind. He grinned despite it all, the wit surfacing like a reflex. Then we give it something new to chew on. Humans don't play by alien rules. Elena arrived just as the first vent cycle initiated, the ship bucking like a wild thing. Alarms blared, but she silenced them with a flick, eyes on the forward sensors. The swarm's lights flickered in the distance, closing. "Initiate," she ordered. The nebula gas flooded the intakes, a roaring inferno in the pipes that Marco wrestled into submission. The ship cloaked, vanishing into the ionized haze, but the strain showed, a hairline crack spiderwebbing across a bulkhead, whispering of consequences yet to come. They had one shot at the jump, one chance to turn the tide. As the engines whined to life, Elena allowed herself a breath. The stars outside steadied, waiting for their response. The dim glow of the emergency lights flickered across the bridge, casting long shadows that danced like specters over the consoles. Elena gripped the armrest of her chair, her knuckles white against the worn leather. The view screen ahead showed the swirling vortex of the nebula, its tendrils of gas coiling like living things, pulling at the Endeavor's battered hull. Alarms blared intermittently, a staccato rhythm that matched the pounding in her chest. They were so close, hours from the relay point that could beam their distress signal across the quadrant, but the ship's failing inertial dampeners were turning every maneuver into a gamble. "Jax, talk to me," she said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. She didn't look at him. Her eyes stayed locked on the screen as if willpower alone could steer them clear. Jax hunched over the engineering panel, his fingers flying across the holographic keys, sweat beading on his forehead. Wires snaked from the console to the exposed guts of the auxiliary core, sparks occasionally jumping like fireflies in the confined space. "Dampeners are at 20%, Cap. The nebula's magnetic field is shredding what's left. If we push the engines harder we might make it, or we might rip the ship in half." He paused, wiping his brow with the back of his hand, a wry grin cracking through the exhaustion. "Your call. I'm fresh out of miracles." Mira stood at the sensor station, her cautious nature etched in the furrow of her brow. She adjusted her glasses, peering at the readouts with a precision that bordered on obsession. "The field's intensifying. There's a pocket of stability about 2,000 clicks ahead, narrow but viable. If we adjust course by 3 degrees port we could thread it." Her voice was measured, but Elena caught the undercurrent of doubt. Mira had been the one to warn them about the nebula's anomalies from the start, back when the mission logs still read like adventure tales instead of survival manuals. Elena nodded, calculating the odds in her head. The rival Krell fleet was out there somewhere, their scouts reported closing in after the ambush at Epsilon Verge. If the Endeavor didn't reach the relay, humanity's first deep space outpost would be left undefended, a sitting target for the Krell's resource raids. The cost wasn't abstract. It was the faces of the colonists they'd ferried out here, families betting everything on this frontier. 3 degrees port. "Jax, reroute power from life support if you have to. Mira, keep eyes on those sensors. Any sign of Krell signatures, you yell." The ship groaned as the thrusters fired, a deep metallic shudder vibrating through the deck plates. Elena felt it in her bones, the hull protesting like an old friend pushed too far. They slipped into the nebula's embrace, colors bleeding across the view screen in hues of violet and crimson, the gas clouds parting just enough to reveal stars twisted into unfamiliar patterns. For a moment, silence reigned, broken only by the hum of straining systems. Then the alarm screamed anew. Myra's hands froze on her console. "Incoming signatures, Krell interceptors, 3 of them. They're matching our vector, Cap. They must have tracked our ion trail." Jax cursed under his breath, slamming a fist against the panel. "No time for subtlety. I can rig a decoy burst from the auxiliary thrusters. Make it look like we're veering starboard. Buys us maybe 5 minutes." Elena stood, her decision crystallizing in the heat of the moment. Brave didn't mean reckless. It meant trusting the team she'd built from misfits and dreamers. "Do it." Mira, plot an evasive through that pocket. "We'll slingshot around the dense core, use the gravity well to shake them." As Jax worked, his witty banter fell away, replaced by focused grunts and the acrid smell of overheating circuits. The ship lurched, the decoy flare blooming behind them like a false dawn. On the view screen, the Krell ships veered, predator instincts drawing them to the bait. But one held course, its sleek form cutting through the nebula with predatory grace. The Endeavor dove into the pocket, the world compressing into a tunnel of raw energy. Elena braced as inertial forces tugged at her, the dampeners whining in protest. Myra's voice cut through the chaos. "Pulling up, now." They burst free, the nebula's grip releasing with a final, violent shake. The pursuing Krell ship loomed large, weapons ports glowing. Jax's hands blurred over the controls. photon array charged, firing. A lance of light erupted from their bow, not enough to destroy but to blind, sensors frying in the overload. The Krell vessel swerved, buying them precious seconds. The relay station flickered into view, a skeletal beacon against the stars, its signal arrays dormant but intact. Elena exhaled, the tension coiling tighter. They were almost there, but the ship's core temperature was climbing, red lines flashing across every display. One wrong move, and the Endeavor would join the nebula's ghosts. "Hold her together," she murmured, more to herself than the crew. The stars ahead seemed to watch, waiting for humanity's next defiant step. The bridge hummed with the low thrum of repaired engines, a sound that felt like the ship's own heartbeat steadying after near-death. Captain Alara Voss gripped the armrests of her chair, her knuckles still white from the hours of chaos. The view screen flickered, showing the nebula's swirling gases parting like a curtain, revealing the faint outline of the alien armada. Dozens of sleek, iridescent vessels holding formation at the edge of the void. They had come for the artifact, that ancient relic humanity had unearthed on the fringe world, a key to unlimited energy that could reshape galaxies. But the aliens saw it as theft, their pride wounded by what they deemed lesser beings meddling in cosmic relics. "Status on the jury-rigged shield?" Ilara asked, her voice steady despite the ache in her chest from a fractured rib she'd ignored. Engineer Kai Ruiz wiped sweat from his brow, his fingers dancing over a console patched together with salvaged conduits and human ingenuity. "Holding at 60%, Cap. It's a Frankenstein job, hull plating fused with the artifact's own field harmonics, but it'll buy us time. Just don't ask it to dance." His wit cut through the tension, a spark in the dim light, drawing a ghost of a smile from the crew. Dr. Lena Hart, the cautious scientist, leaned over her scans, her glasses slipping down her nose. "The Armada's weapons are charging again. If we transmit the artifact's data now like we planned, they'll know we've cracked it. But holding back means we lose everything." Her hands trembled slightly, not from fear but from the weight of what they'd uncovered. Not just power but a map to stars untouched by war, a chance for humanity to leap beyond survival. From the navigation station, Mira Chin shot back, her gritty determination etched in the lines around her eyes. "No choice. We back off, they glass the colony. Transmit it and we force their hand, show them we're not prey." She punched in the coordinates for the final jump, her fingers sure even as the ship groaned under residual damage from the earlier skirmish. Ilara nodded, the decision settling like lead in her gut. "Do it. Kai, route power to the array. Lena, encode the full schematic, make it undeniable." The crew moved as one, a rhythm born of shared peril. No speeches, just action. Kai's quick solder fixing a flickering relay, Lena's rapid keystrokes weaving the data into a beacon of defiance, Mira aligning the ship for evasion. The transmission burst forth, a lance of light piercing the nebula. On the view screen, the alien flagship pulsed, its hull shimmering as if in shock. Alarms blared, enemy fire incoming, but Kai's shield flared to life, deflecting the first volley in a cascade of sparks that lit the bridge like fireworks. "Eat that, you oversized glow sticks." Kai hooped, his laugh raw. Mira hit the jump initiators. The ship lurched, stars streaking into lines as they slipped through a micro-wormhole, a trick Lena had adapted from the artifact's patterns. Behind them, the Armada hesitated, their formations fracturing as the data flooded their systems. Proof that humanity hadn't just survived. They'd innovated, turned the relic's secrets into a shield for all. They emerged on the far side of the nebula, the colony world a blue marble in the distance. But victory tasted bittersweet. Scans showed the artifact's core destabilized from overuse, its light dimming to a faint ember. "We saved the colony," Ilara said, slumping back, "but the relic's gone dark. No more easy jumps to the stars." Lena adjusted her glasses, meeting Ilara's gaze. "Gone dark maybe. But we learned from it. Our engineers, our minds, they'll build the next one. Without their pride holding us back." Kai clapped Mira on the shoulder. "Hell yeah. Stars bowed? Nah, we just gave him a nudge." The ship drifted toward home, scarred but unbroken, the crew's camaraderie a quiet anchor against the vast unknown. Out there, the galaxy shifted, whispers of human grit echoing through the void, a legacy not of conquest but of those who walked past pride to claim the stars on their own terms.